We, the economy track of the Youth 7, recognize that COVID-19 is exacerbating inequalities and pushing millions into poverty. We therefore need bold, sustainable investment today, one that is responsible and justifiable to the future generations. We envisage a world where our economies drive inclusive and forward-looking labour markets and societies. International economic cooperation is thriving, and no country is left behind.
According to the OECD, child poverty has increased on average in all G7 countries over the past decade, remaining above 10% since 2015. To address this and to promote social mobility, G7 countries must increase expenditure for universal quality education and consider unconditional basic income for young people and for families with children. Moreover, IMF data shows that youth unemployment has risen at 3 times the rate of that of prime-age workers. We need to improve employment prospects for young people, including those not in education, employment or training, by incentivising green and digital job creation, by strengthening vocational training, and by enhancing public-private upskilling initiatives. Alongside poverty and unemployment, the pandemic has also affected young people's mental health. The OECD estimates that the lack of mental health well-being contributes to a 4% drop in GDP. This is why job quality and pay should be integrated into youth employment strategies while promoting the mental health of young workers.
In surveys we have conducted of young people in the G7 countries, respondents have frequently expressed worries about the sustainability of our current economic models and the environmental impact of our economic activities. That's why we propose the elimination of tariffs on environmental goods and services, call for the enforcement of transparency of the environmental impacts of our supply chains, and ask for regulation to promote trade of secondary materials to support the circular economy. Yet there are also other flaws in our international economic system. Humans are far too often victims of violations of human rights, and labour standards in supply chains are often not up to standard. According to the ILO, there are more than 40 million victims of human trafficking worldwide, and that's why we call on our G7 leaders to penalise companies that fail to take concrete steps to eliminate child and forced labour, as well as human trafficking in their supply chains. And we also want to see the enforcement of international conventions on decent work and human rights, which safeguard human rights and labour standards. So as you can see, our traditional ways of thinking about economic performance need to be updated urgently. We need to go beyond GDP and supplement our current measures of economic performance by developing indicators that integrate well-being, sustainability and inclusivity outcomes, what we believe our economies and societies should stand for. And that's why we hope that the G7 countries will align their budget decisions to these indicators to ensure that this translates into tangible change in people's day-to-day lives.
The COVID-19 pandemic highlighted persistent funding gaps for organizations and initiatives that seek to address the fundamental needs of people worldwide. We need to close these gaps, and we thus call on G7 leaders to fulfill their commitment to raise official development assistance to 0.7% of national income. This funding will mark an important step to addressing key development issues such as education and hunger, and will help us achieve the Sustainable Development Goals by working across sectors. In addition, the lack of adequate multilateral action amidst the COVID-19 pandemic has highlighted the importance of partnership in preventing future crises. Our G7 leaders need to coordinate, accelerate, and scale up existing crises response frameworks by increasing financial commitments and accessibility. As a result, we could strengthen the resilience of the most vulnerable countries to economic, social, and environmental crises. Lastly, we hope that the race towards finding the COVID vaccine will make us change our thinking on research, innovation, and scientific knowledge by embedding a development approach to innovation that closes the gaps, reforming our intellectual property systems, temporarily waiving COVID-19 patents, and increasing technology sharing through CTAP, as well as addressing procurement barriers. We will come a few steps closer to a reality in which science truly benefits us all.